Moving on from question 1 to question 2 of this first passage of reading comprehension drill set number 4 over at lawhub.lsac.org, you can see we still have our main idea highlighted sentences selected from our upfront read prior to the first question. Now we're going to read question 2 and determine whether it is concerned with the passage overall or a specific term or location reference. So reading question 2, it says, the passage provides information most relevant to answering which one of the following questions. Well, we're going to just highlight passage provides information relevant to answering which question. And since there is no clear term or location reference, you want to treat this as a hidden main idea question. So we're going to reread our main idea highlight sentences, and we're going to eliminate things that either have nothing to do with that main idea, are a reversal of that main idea, or clearly require additional information to relate to our main ideas. So we'll read those pink highlights now. Legal scholar S.J. Brakel believes that videotape yields less reliable testimony or lessens jurors' ability to assess witnesses' credibility. The fact that phenomena such as failure to maintain eye contact with a questioner, fidgeting, and inappropriate tone of voice are considered in many cultures to signal deceit provides some anecdotal support for Brakel's claims. Brakel's critics argue that witnesses giving their testimony outside the courtroom, in a lawyer's office, or a recording studio are adequately aware, if given a formal reminder, of the penalties for perjury. The critics also suggest that even truthful witnesses might, under the stress of testifying in court, forget or involuntarily repress information. Brakel's arguments against videotape testimony presume that witnesses' nonverbal and paralinguistic cues are a reliable basis for assessing veracity. But in court, when a great deal of both verbal and nonverbal information is available, it may be difficult for jurors to assimilate it all. It is reasonable to conclude, then, that if the amount of nonverbal information jurors receive is essentially unrelated or even inversely related to the accuracy of their judgments, videotape testimony could be employed without reducing jurors' ability to detect deception. These criticisms of Brakel's views have some empirical support. So, we've got this main idea that you might recall from our upfront read if you saw the video for question 1 of this passage. And we know that it's all about this idea that the author is against, to a degree, Brakel's assertion that videotape testimony is not as good as live in-person testimony. So, starting with choice A, we're going to have that in mind without hunting and pecking. Choice A reads, which particular paralinguistic cues are regarded as indicating involuntary repression of information by witnesses? Well, we might kind of remember this stuff as being in there. We certainly talked about paralinguistic cues. We're talking about information and witnesses. So on the exam, I'm probably going to leave choice A open right now. And again, I don't want to hunt and peck without any sort of restraint on where I'm looking. We'll just leave that open. If nothing else is possible, we'll come back to A and select it. Then choice B, what sometimes prompts jurors to resort to stereotyping strategies? Well, again, we're talking about the stereotyping strategies for jurors and like a bad nonverbal cue. So this might be relevant as well. So we're going to hold B2 at this point. Now, just kind of scrolling down and framing things up as best we can so we don't go up and down needlessly. Choice C, is presentation of videotape testimony a widespread practice at present? Well, we're not concerned with how frequent it is. And that widespread practice aspect is something that's completely outside the scope of the main idea about whether videotape or live in-person testimony is better for legal proceedings as far as jurors being able to determine whether someone is being deceitful or not. So C, completely outside of the scope of the main idea. We could probably eliminate it, just going widespread practice, not going to be part of a question that could be answered from the information. Then choice D, why is the use of videotape testimony regarded as an expedient way of presenting testimony? Well, we're not concerned with expediting the testimony and why people use the videotape testimony. We're concerned with its accuracy. So choice D, we can eliminate as well. And then choice E, is there empirical evidence supporting the view that witnesses sometimes forget relevant information under stress? We're not talking about their forgetfulness. So we can get rid of E, hopefully almost immediately as well, which is probably the most realistic way to engage with this problem. We get rid of C, D, and E, hopefully relatively quickly. And then we focus on the actual terms pertaining to A and B, hopefully around our highlighted sentences. So we're looking for the term stereotyping and paralinguistic. So I don't see stereotyping or paralinguistic here in the bottom two paragraphs. And we're just going to scroll on up, and we can see that we start talking about both paralinguistic and stereotyping in the exact same paragraph. So we should be able to targeted read for choices A and B without hunting and pecking throughout everything in the passage. And you can consider using this find text tool, but it's not the cleanest thing to use. And I would recommend probably not using it unless you struggle to skim for terms. But now we just got to cross check this specific information in choices A and B against what we have in this third paragraph, which says that Brakel's arguments against videotape testimony presume that witnesses' nonverbal and paralinguistic cues are reliable, but it doesn't actually say which ones particularly. And furthermore, involuntary repression of information. Again, we don't have a distinction in this paragraph about voluntary versus involuntary, so we can eliminate choice A for that reason. But we see this term of stereotyping right here after the highlight. And just reading the sentence above to make sure that we understand the surrounding context, it says, but in court, when a great deal of both verbal and nonverbal information is available, it may be difficult for jurors to assimilate it all. And this, meaning the information in the prior sentence, can trigger stereotyping strategies. So we can answer choice B, the question of what sometimes prompts jurors to resort to stereotyping strategies, actually from information that just so happened to be in one of our main idea highlighted sentences. Thank you for watching this explanation video of a practice problem of reading comprehension drill set number 4 over at lawhub.lsac.org. If you enjoyed the tips it contained, please consider liking the video or subscribing to our channel to be alerted when new explanation videos are produced by MyGuru. Also, take a look at the description below because you'll find additional links to resources from MyGuru, including a set of full practice prep test explanations that are similar to what you just watched. And remember, as you prepare for the LSAT, it's supposed to be hard.